right. Thank you to everyone that's here and watching. I appreciate your time. My presentation is 5 rules for decision making using the 80-20 principle. A quick introduction to the 80-20 rule. It was discovered by Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. He noticed 80% of Italy's land was owned by only 20% of the population. Later studies showed if Microsoft fixes their top 20% of most reported bugs, 80% of the errors and crashes are eliminated. 80% of workplace injuries are caused by 20% of the hazards. Basically, 20% of the inputs gets you 80% of the results. However, the two numbers do not need to equal 100. So while this is an 80-20 principle, it may work out to be 90-20. It may work out to be 95-15. Any of the various ratios work for this analysis. You make 35,000 decisions each day. These decisions include what you eat, where, purchase, career choices, what we say and how we say it. If you have children, those decisions are multiplied. Everything you decide on autopilot is a part of these 35,000 decisions. So while it may seem like a large number, a lot of the decisions you make may be subconscious, not necessarily something you're writing down and bringing to the surface necessarily. It may just be an autopilot decision, which we'll kind of go over later here. Do you find yourself struggling with some of these decisions? With that type of volume of decisions, you are bound to struggle with a few. Sometimes the most mundane decisions can snowball into big deals. You start to think one wrong decision will start a streak of many, many wrong decisions, where it becomes a streak. You start to believe in the hot hand fallacy inverted. And if you don't know what the hot hand fallacy is, it's the purported phenomenon that a person who experiences a successful outcome with a random event has a greater probability of successes in further attempts. The reverse is one bad decision makes the probability of another bad decision go up. Instead of two independent events, you think because one of those 35,000 decisions went poorly that now you're going to start a string of poor decisions rather than treat each one independently. So how can you make better decisions? The 5 rules I'm going to present to you will no doubt help you make better decisions. Rather than being a bottleneck in the process, a form of automation will occur. If-then statements help to unclog the bottleneck. Property management companies use price lists for this exact reason. If the leaky faucet repair is under $350, go ahead and fix it. No need for approvals or signatures. So again, trying to make some of these decisions default, as well as removing yourself from this process will separate unimportant decisions from important decisions. So rule number 1, not many decisions are very important. Brendan Burchard of the High Performance Academy gives a great writing exercise to determine what is and is not important. Create 3 rows on your paper. The top row is current projects and tasks to move them forward. The middle lists people to contact, who you need to reach out to, and who you are waiting for a response. The final row is priorities. Priorities are defined as any activity that must happen for the project to move forward. You should limit this list to 3 to 5 items. Quote here, tell me what you pay attention, and I will tell you who you are. So take a look at your sheet that you just developed, the little priority sheet from the High Performance Academy. That encompasses all the important decisions you have to make. Are there 10, 20, 50, 100 total? Divide that number by that 35,000, which we discussed on the second slide for how many decisions you make in a day. And that's a pretty small number in terms of what you should be paying attention to. So ask yourself how that compares to what you normally pay attention to. Is it really important when people take a lunch break or where they go? Does being at the office for the full day correlate to getting work done, or is that what's comfortable? Refocus your attention to the items on your list. Everything else is a distraction. So now here's where we're going to determine which of these 35,000 decisions that we make every day are important or not. So to begin the 80-20 analysis of decision making, ask yourself the question, is this important? Look at your priority sheet. If it's not on the sheet, the answer is no. File that decision under the 80%, or again, whatever that percent calculates out to be. It doesn't have to be this perfect 80-20 equals 100 ratio. If yes, the decision goes in the 20% of productive decisions throughout the day. Think of these decisions coming across your desk and you filing them in an inbox-outbox style. The inbox is the 20% you're keeping for yourself. The 80% or the outbox is what you will delegate to people on your team. And this decision should not be agonizing, and you need to delegate two key concepts if you find your decision is a no. So if you're putting it in this outbox, this should be a quick instinctual process. So not a lot of thinking involved. If it takes thinking, we'll cover that a little later as well. If it takes thinking to determine between you should decide or decide to delegate. If there is hesitation, it goes in the no file. Delegate these outbox decisions. Remember, this process is to remove you as the bottleneck in the decision making. Because the decisions are not important, you need to delegate. And if you can't decide between if it's important or not, then it's not important. Again, the goal of this 80-20 analysis is to whittle down your decisions to the essentials that move projects forward. A meeting or a phone call with owners, clients, stakeholders about schedule, scope, and budget is important and needs to be handled by you. What microwave or coffee maker goes in the break room, or which pictures you want hung in your office and where, not so important. Someone else can decide that for you. So again, we're really trying to get ourselves out of these mundane decisions that other people can make that do not move the project forward is our focus for these yes and no, important or not important questions. Rule number 2. The most important decisions are often those made only by default. Automate the system as much as possible. Default decision making is more efficient than delegation. Delegation still brings about the human element and experience. So it may seem like a simple decision to you, so you delegate it out to someone and they may not have the experience in that realm and somehow miss the boat in terms of the conclusion they come to. But default decisions, eliminate that subjective judgment by just having almost if-then statements, greater than, less than. Again, going back to that price list of if it's less than $350, no decision needs to be made besides getting the work done and moving forward. Space I can recover, time never. This quote is a reminder that once time is gone, you can't get it back. Default decisions increase the amount of time you can give to a project. I will compare it to driving a car. If you had to think about placing your foot on the accelerator and steering the wheel, then signaling to turn, you might not get where you need to go, at least not as quickly as if those decisions were default. So again, a lot of these things you may take for granted when driving a vehicle because you have that experience, where a younger driver needs to think a lot more about hand placement, foot placement, directions. All these things can become very confusing. But a more experienced driver will have a better way of handling these things through default mechanisms that they've already used and learned through the hours put into driving. So let's take a look at a few key questions to delve deeper into this default decision making. Now that most important decisions are made by default, we'll dig a little deeper into the topic. Are you missing any tremendous problems or opportunities? So this approach is problem seeking rather than problem solving. So we're taking this more proactive instead of reactive approach to anything that may be coming up on the horizon. Examples include Uber for public transit, Airbnb for public places to stay. Now again, both of these are very established industries that were disrupted by problems that these other companies solved and the larger places failed to realize. Do you know exactly why things are going well? What is working well when it shouldn't, or at least not intended to? What are we unintentionally providing to customers that for some reason they seem to appreciate greatly? An example is a best-selling book written for an audience of one, in which the message translates to so many through a similar situation. So while the product or service you are creating or developing or improving on has one intended consequence while you're in the meeting and developing this product or service, and when it's released, people are finding a different use for it, and you're getting that feedback. How does that kind of compare to the why that you had originally established for that product or service? So again, this is kind of looking internally at your process and seeing not only that it's working, but really finding out why, and it may be an unexpected answer. And on the flip side, do you know exactly why things are going wrong? Is there something going badly astray where we think we know why, but where we might be totally wrong? An example is a product not reaching the forecasted numbers. You have compiled the data, all signs point to success, yet crickets. Keep diving until the why is answered. So again, in the meeting, you ran it through all the groups, all the tests, everything's testing well and positive reactions, and people within the company are excited about the product or the service, and once it's released, all of this feedback was for naught because the clientele or the customer base that you are targeting responds in the opposite direction. And you need to find out why that is, because based on your research, it's showing that they should be just as excited as everyone in the organization was. But come to find out, once the product hits the market or you make your service available, people are not responding positively. So why is that? Are you missing something underneath the surface? Because there are always important events occurring underneath the surface without anyone noticing, what could those be this time? Examples of places to search are online forums to look at reviews for any insights as to who wants what. Sometimes the solution is popping up in threads and comment sections, yet the message is getting lost. For reviews, pick the middle of the road rates, like 3 stars out of 5. 5 stars tend to be someone who just might like the work of your company and loves everything you do no matter what. And it's really not a true objective rating. And the opposite can be said for the 1-star reviews, where they're just not going to like anything that you put out, or the way it's presented was something that turned them off, so they gave you a 1-star without ever even testing the product. So again, getting these middle of the road, positive and negative feedback to kind of use as constructive criticism. Again, going out and looking at reviews on websites, or even some of the comment sections, while you shouldn't necessarily read them all, may provide some insight into what your product is lacking or what your service says it provides yet it doesn't. So those are some valuable resources to find out what could be occurring underneath that maybe you're being blinded by it because you're so close to the situation. Rule 3, use the 80-20-100 rule for important decisions. The rule breakdown is gather 80% of the data and perform 80% of the relevant analysis in the first 20% of time available, then make a decision 100% of the time, and act decisively as if you were 100% confident that the decision is correct. Fact, you will never have all the data or time you would like. There will always be more information available, another test to run, someone needs to reach out to you before the decision needs to happen. This is an example of Parkinson's law, which states work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. If you have infinite amount of time to decide, a decision will never be reached. So an example of that is back in school, you'd be assigned a paper or a presentation that you'd get the syllabus at the beginning of the school year, and by the end of you'd look to the last week and you had a big presentation and you have 16 weeks to get it done. And it takes you the last 2 weeks of the semester to get it done. So really that project was allotted 16 total weeks. And someone's going to use all 16 weeks of that to do something that in reality only took you 2 weeks time to get done. So again, kind of realizing that these decisions don't need to take all day, all week, all month. Even if you think you have all the data, there's still one more thing or one more person, or there's always something that could have been done prior to the decision being made. And realizing that is going to help in this 80-20-100 aspect of this analysis. So the 80 The number 80 part of this rule is gather 80% of the data and perform 80% of the relevant analyses. Remember, these numbers are just guidelines. The 80% may be 70, 65, 90. The relevant data and analyses will be determined by your expert judgment prior to the rule, paired with the rule one's ability to eliminate unimportant decisions. Examples of the data collected are costs, timeline, delivery dates, and durations. Pretty much anything that's qualitative or quantitative. Examples of analysis are comparing options where the quality may be better, but is it worth the extra cost? So again, just really getting this 80% of the data and analysis figured out, and experienced project managers will already have an idea of what those each of those are for their specific situation. Now the 20 aspect of this is in the first 20% of available time. So if you had an hour to decide, make the decision in the first 12 minutes. While this seems like a radical measure, you have to remember that 80% of the relevant data and analysis are already performed. You have a clear picture, so what's the hesitation? It's like a draft pick on a professional team. The scouting department performed the 80% of the analysis and data. Now it's time to make the pick. So now the last little part of this rule is then make a decision 100% of the time and act as if you were 100% confident that the decision is right. Again, to take that draft pick example, no team drafts a player thinking they will be a bust. That team is 100% confident the draftee will make an immediate positive impact on the team. You need to show confidence in the data and the analysis. If not, you have bigger problems than the current decision. So again, this is putting your trust in this process of gathering a majority of the data, performing a majority of the analysis, and really making that decision early on with 100% confidence, knowing that you are right. And you may not be right, and we'll cover that a little later as well. And this is what rule number 4 kind of covers the if you are not right. So if what you have decided is not working, change your mind early rather than late. So the goal here is to be agile. You're going to be wrong. It's the next move that makes the difference. The sooner you act, the sooner the situation can be remedied. We must all either wear out or rust out. Every one of us. My choice is to wear out. So this is, you can sit on the sidelines or you can play the game. You can act quickly and proactively. I use this quote to kind of drive home the point of wearing out through action rather than rusting out doing nothing. So again, the goal of this quote is to further emphasize this. If it's not working, start to do something else, act, decide a different way, and kind of continue this process. So another fact, market always trumps analysis. People vote with their dollar. Words are cheap. Opinions even cheaper. Think of a person who fills out a survey saying 5 stars for everything. Yet when it comes time to buy, no purchase is made. In this instance, research says it's a 5-star product, home run all the way. Meanwhile, no one is buying it. Which do you put more weight in, the survey or the buy rate? And with this acting quickly and deciding quickly, and experimentation is going to be necessary. So you're probably not going to hit it out of the park right away. You're going to have to try some things, fail, try again, fail, see what works, what doesn't. This is going to be turning the art of project management decision making into a science. In your effort to figuring out what works, experimentation is required. A great mindset to take into experimenting is failing forward. So a lot of times you hear fail quickly, fail often. An important aspect of those two things is to also fail forward. This assumes that you're going to fail and tells you to learn something from it and apply that lesson to the future. Document these results for future 80-20 analysis. Failing forward also means you won't make the same mistake twice. So again, in this try, fail, learn, repeat kind of, again, experiment. But don't fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy. So the sunk cost fallacy is your decisions become tainted by the emotional investments you accumulate. And the more you invest in something, the harder it becomes to abandon it. Some people just cannot let it go. Don't persevere with a losing solution because your ego won't let you move on. The resources have already been spent. That doesn't mean more should be put into for revival. So a good example of this is someone buys a ticket to an outdoor event. There's rain on the way, and someone else wants to go to this event but has not bought a ticket yet. On that day, the rain is present. So who's more likely to go? The person who bought the ticket or the person who really wants to go to the show but has not purchased a ticket? So in reality, both parties have the same probability of going to the show. The sunk cost fallacy makes people think that because a ticket was purchased, that person is more likely to tough it out, and because they've spent the resources, they're going to do anything to get to the show. When in reality, both parties have a very equal chance of going and not going. So rule 5, when something is working well, double and redouble your bets. This is like pouring gasoline on a fire. An example is people who fit well within your organization. You can never have too much talent. At that point, it becomes your job to manage them. So again, I use this quote because I think it's important to emphasize action in this way as well. Where not only are you failing and you need to act quickly, in this case, you are succeeding and need to exploit this opportunity quickly. So again, wearing out this process of doubling and redoubling instead of sitting back and kind of reaping the benefits of something that, a decision that you made a while ago. You need to continue to act in favor of this decision and continue to double and even redouble your bets. A fact, sometimes you just don't know. Your data says it shouldn't work. Further analysis says it shouldn't work. Your previous experience says it shouldn't work. Yet this time, it's working. This does not mean it's a fluke. It just means your markers for decision making may need to be adjusted. The current times may make your older models obsolete. While you're trying to figure out why it's working, continue to put more resources towards it to maximize the benefits. So again, this is those underlying factors that we may not be seeing, but you still need to go with the results. And in Rule 4, change your decision making quickly. And now in Rule 5, continue to emphasize this new movement that's realizing gains you never thought possible. And with this kind of growth, don't settle for modest growth. Modest growth doesn't create big and bold. It results in the status quo. An example of modest growth is the inflation rate. While it's better than no growth at all, or worse, even a loss, this 80-20 approach is about big change quickly and effectively. To refer back to the Roosevelt quote, modest growth is rusting away while big and bold is wearing out. So again, while this thing is working, you're going to want to continue to grow, and not just incrementally, but even if you don't know why it's working, just know that it is. This exemplifies your trust in the process. All of your data and analysis you don't know why, and at this point, that's okay. Eventually, you find out why. You can further exploit that opportunity. Again, wear this strategy out by doubling down rather than rusting out and not capitalizing. So this is the opportunity to really hammer home this progress, and while you're still trying to figure out why, you're continuing to put valuable resources into it because you're seeing that it's working. So now let's summarize. Rule number 1, not many decisions are very important. Again, refer to your priority sheet to determine the importance. This is the inbox-outbox approach. Rule number 2, the most important decisions are often those made only by default. This step removes you as the bottleneck in the decision-making process, improving scalability. Rule 3, use the 80-20-100 rule for important decisions. Again, this is gather 80% of the data, perform 80% of the relevant analysis, make the decision in 20% of the time allotted, and move forward with 100% confidence in the decision being made. Rule 4, if what you have decided isn't working, change your mind early rather than late. Be proactive, seeking problems rather than solving them. And again, this is emphasize the experiment and test new ideas and approaches. Rule 5, when something is working well, double and redouble your bets. This is your opportunity to go big and bold. Like an investor in a startup, most will be duds, but it just takes one home run to flip that script. Now for a little self-promotion. For more tips on how to use the 80-20 principle for decision making, my book is available, The Entrepreneurial Project Manager. Down at the bottom there, crcpress.com, and use promo code FLR40 for 20% off. If you're not sure, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website and receive a free excerpt of about the first, 15 pages of it to kind of give you an idea of what to expect later on. And now for a little audience participation. Tell me what are the toughest decisions you had to make on your projects, and how this 80-20 rule of decision making would have helped in that process. My email is at the bottom there. If you want to respond to this question via email, I do read everything that's inboxed to me, and I will get back to you easily within 1 day. So hopefully we can start a dialogue on this and kind of learn from each other in this process of what your toughest decisions are and how this may have helped you with those. And then if you have any questions for me, again, feel free to email me. Again, this discussion, I really want to get some good feedback going on it and see if you guys are using it already, how it's working for you, and if not, how you see it working in the future. Thank you all for spending your time with me. I appreciate it, and that ends the presentation.